The testing chamber looked like a battlefield after a war had been fought inside it. Broken machinery lay scattered across the floor, sending up thin streams of smoke that made strange patterns in the emergency lighting. Melted circuits dripped from the walls like metallic tears. The smell of overheated electronics filled the air with a sharp chemical odor that made the alien scientists cover their breathing organs. In the center of all this destruction, Han-Na stood calmly brushing a small amount of dust off her military uniform. She looked around at the damaged equipment with the expression of someone who had just finished an interesting but not particularly difficult exercise. A thin layer of sweat on her forehead was the only sign that she had exerted herself at all. Dr. Vextal emerged from the observation room on shaking legs. His 4 eyes were wide with shock, and his blue skin had turned pale gray. Behind him, the few remaining alien scientists followed like people walking away from a terrible accident they could not stop thinking about. How Dr. Vextal managed to say. It was the only word his mind could form. Everything else he wanted to ask seemed impossible to put into language that made sense. Han-Na looked at the lead scientist with genuine confusion. What she asked. Her voice was friendly and curious, like someone who had just been asked about the weather. How did you do any of that? Dr. Vextal gestured at the destroyed testing chamber with one trembling hand. How did you move that fast? How did you react before our computers finished generating threats? How did you solve scenarios that were designed to be mathematically impossible? Han-Na shrugged in the casual way that humans did when they did not think something was particularly remarkable. Military training, I guess, she said. Plus, my grandmother always said I was quick with my hands when I was little. The alien scientists stared at her with expressions that mixed disbelief with something approaching religious awe. They had just witnessed performance that challenged their understanding of physics, biology, and the fundamental nature of life itself. To them, it had been like watching miracles happen repeatedly for 30 minutes. To Han-Na, it had been a moderately challenging training exercise that required her attention but not her maximum effort. Dr. Yil-Ara stepped forward with her long silver neck extended toward Han-Na like she was studying a completely new form of life. The numbers you achieved, she said in her musical voice, they are beyond anything we thought was possible for carbon-based organisms. You were reacting faster than neural impulses should be able to travel. Han-Na tilted her head thoughtfully. I do not know about neural impulses, she said, but humans train for this kind of thing from childhood. We play games that require quick reactions. We practice sports that need fast responses. Our military teaches us to move without thinking about. At first, she pointed at the destroyed combat simulation equipment. This was like the virtual reality systems we use for training, except the graphics were much better. Very impressive technology. The alien scientists felt their scientific worldview collapse completely. What Han-Na described as routine human development was performance that exceeded their most optimistic theories about biological capabilities. What she called childhood games had prepared her for challenges that their best warriors could not handle. Researcher Cole Min stepped forward with his data tablet clutched against his chest like a shield. He looked at Han-Na with the expression of someone trying to understand a natural disaster. Captain Kim, he said carefully, do you realize that you just broke every known record for reaction speed by margins that should be impossible? Han-Na looked genuinely surprised. I broke records, she asked. I thought this was just a basic coordination test. I was not even trying very hard. The silence that followed her words was so complete that they could hear the cooling fans in the damaged computers struggling to work, not trying very hard. The phrase echoed in the minds of alien scientists who had just watched their most advanced equipment destroyed by what the human considered casual effort. Dr. Vextal felt something like panic rising in his chest as the implications began to sink in. If this was Han-Na holding back, then what would she be capable of at maximum effort? What could humans do when they were actually trying to set records instead of just playing games. As word of the test results spread through the galactic community, the reaction was immediate and dramatic. Military strategists who had been planning campaigns based on assumed human limitations suddenly found their calculations meaningless. Scientists who had published papers on the theoretical limits of biological performance discovered their work was obsolete. The test footage was classified at the highest levels, but rumors spread anyway. Stories began circulating about the human, who had moved faster than light and destroyed alien technology just by taking a coordination test. Most beings dismissed these stories as impossible exaggerations. The few who had access to the actual data knew better. Emergency sessions were called. In the Galactic Council chambers, representatives from dozens of species gathered to discuss what the human test results meant for their understanding of biology warfare and the balance of power in known space. Some delegates argued that humans should be classified as a potential threat species and monitored carefully. Others suggested that humanity should be offered immediate membership in the Galactic Council with full voting rights. A few recommended opening formal diplomatic channels to ensure humans remained allies rather than enemies. Meanwhile, Han Na sat in the station cafeteria drinking coffee and reading a book while she waited for her transport back to Earth. She had no idea that her simple participation in a coordination test had triggered the largest scientific and political crisis in galactic history. When reporters finally tracked her down, they asked how she felt about achieving the impossible and rewriting the laws of physics. Hanna looked confused by the questions. "I just touched some lights and moved around a room," she said. It was fun, but not that difficult. The reporters pressed her for more details about her training and her abilities. They wanted to know the secret behind human performance that defied explanation. Han Na thought about it seriously for a moment. "I guess humans just do not give up easily," she said finally. "When something is difficult, we practice until it becomes easy. When something seems impossible, we find a way to make it possible. That is just how we are." Dr. Vextal watched the interview from his laboratory while he tried to repair his destroyed equipment. He had dedicated his life to understanding the limits of biological performance, and one human had shown him that everything he thought he knew was wrong. But perhaps most disturbing was Han Na's final comment during the interview. When asked if she was the fastest human alive, she had laughed and shaken her head. "Oh no," she said with genuine amusement. "I have a little brother named Ji-hoon who is much faster than me at video games. And my cousin Min-jun was always better at sports. If you really want to test human reaction speeds, you should find some professional athletes or special forces soldiers." The alien scientists realized with growing horror that they had not tested an exceptional human. They had tested an average one. Dr. Vextal sat alone in his destroyed laboratory, surrounded by the wreckage of equipment that had been pushed beyond its design limits by a single human female who thought she was just playing a simple game. He stared at readings that challenged everything he had believed about life and physics, and the nature of reality itself. Outside his window, the stars looked the same as they always had. But everything else had changed. The galaxy had learned that humans were not just another species with normal limitations and predictable capabilities. They were something completely different, something that evolution had spent millions of years perfecting into a form that could adapt to any challenge and overcome any obstacle through pure speed determination and tactical thinking. The alien scientists had wanted to see if humans could react fast. They had gotten their answer in ways that would give them nightmares for years to come. And somewhere in the back of his mind, Dr. Vextal could not stop thinking about what Han Na had said about her brother and cousin. If she was just average, then what were the exceptional humans capable of? He decided that some questions were better left unanswered. The galaxy was a safer place when humans thought they were ordinary. But it was too late for that now. The secret was out, and there was no putting it back. Dr. Vextal pushed the test into Phase 3 without warning Han Na what was coming. The gentle white lights in the testing chamber suddenly changed to harsh red flashing beams. Loud, sharp sounds filled the room like alarm sirens. The smooth walls began moving, creating barriers that appeared and disappeared in random patterns. This phase was designed to trigger real fear responses in test subjects. The red lights and threatening sounds were meant to activate the deepest, survival instincts of any species. When beings felt truly threatened, they moved at their absolute fastest speeds. The alien scientists had built this phase to measure maximum biological performance under stress. They had no idea what they were about to unleash. Hanna felt the change instantly. Her relaxed smile disappeared as her brain recognized danger signals. Her pupils grew wide to take in more light. Her breathing became deeper and faster to pump more oxygen into her blood. Her heart rate jumped from 60 beats per minute to over 100 in 3 seconds. Every muscle in her body became tight and ready like springs loaded with energy. Her military training kicked in as her mind automatically classified the situation. Red lights meant danger. Loud sounds meant threats. Moving obstacles meant combat environment. The casual woman who had been playing with simple lights was gone. In her place stood a human warrior whose ancestors had survived millions of years of evolution by being faster and deadlier than everything that tried to kill them. The first red light appeared, and Han-Na moved toward it with explosive speed. Her movement was no longer smooth or graceful. It was sharp and violent and precise. She struck the target with her palm like she was hitting an enemy soldier. 0.045 seconds. In the observation room, Cole Min dropped his data tablet. The sound of it hitting the floor echoed through the stunned silence of the alien scientists. They watched in horror and fascination as their testing equipment registered numbers that seemed impossible. "She is moving faster than our computers. Can track properly," Coleman whispered. His green skin had turned pale yellow with fear. Dr. Vex Tal stared at readings that challenged everything he knew about physics and biology. The human was responding to threats before the testing system had finished generating them. Her reaction times were approaching the theoretical limits of nerve impulse transmission. But this was only the beginning. Han-Na had stopped thinking about touching lights. Her combat training had taken complete control of her actions. Every red flash was an enemy muzzle flare. Every moving barrier was hostile cover. Every sound was incoming fire that she needed to avoid. She moved through the obstacle course like liquid death flowing around barriers and striking targets with mechanical precision. Her body had become a weapon optimized by evolution and refined by military discipline. The testing chamber filled with more red lights, and the barriers moved faster. Most species would have been overwhelmed by the chaos and confusion. But chaos was where humans had learned to thrive. Han-Na found patterns in the madness and used them to predict where threats would appear next. 0.038 seconds, 0.035 seconds, 0.032 seconds. Each measurement was lower than anything in the galactic databases. The alien scientists watched their instruments overload as they tried to track movements that were beyond their design specifications. Dr. Yil-Ara backed away from her control station as sparks began flying from overheated circuits. "This is madness," she said. "No biological entity should be able to move this fast. The energy requirements alone should be impossible for a carbon-based life form." But Han-Na was not thinking about energy requirements or biological limitations. Her mind had entered what human soldiers called the combat zone. Time seemed to slow down around her. She could see individual photons of light traveling through the air. She could predict where moving barriers would be 3 seconds before they got there. Her hands moved in precise strikes, hitting targets with perfect accuracy. Her feet found optimal positions without conscious thought. Her eyes tracked multiple threats simultaneously, while her brain calculated movement vectors and response priorities. The testing system began generating threat scenarios that were designed to be impossible for any known species. Multiple targets appeared at once, requiring responses in different directions. Barriers moved in complex patterns that should have trapped any test subject. Han-Na responded to all of it with increasing efficiency and deadly grace. She was not just adapting to the test anymore. She was learning to hunt it like prey. Her predator instincts were fully active now, and the testing chamber had become her hunting ground. 0.029 seconds. The observation room filled with smoke as more equipment overloaded. Emergency lighting cast red shadows through the haze as alien scientists evacuated their stations. But Dr. Vex Tal remained at his post watching the impossible human performance with scientific fascination overcoming his fear. Han-Na spun and struck and moved through the chaos like she had been born for it. Because in a way she had been. Every human carried the genetic memory of countless generations who had survived by being faster and smarter and more violent than everything else in their environment. The alien scientists had wanted to see if humans could react fast. They were getting their answer in ways that would give them nightmares for years to come. Researcher Mor Kek used all 6 of his tentacles to shut down his overheating instruments. "She is not following any known patterns of biological response," he said, in a voice tight with panic. "She moves like a force of nature rather than a living being." Dr. Vex Tal watched Han-Na destroy his testing scenarios with brutal efficiency and felt something like religious awe mixed with primal terror. The human was operating on principles that his science could not explain. She had transcended the normal limits of biology and entered a realm of performance that seemed almost supernatural. But she was still just warming up. The testing system threw everything it had at her. Multiple moving barriers created a maze of obstacles. Dozens of targets appeared and disappeared in milliseconds. Sounds and lights created a sensory overload that should have paralyzed any thinking being. Han-Na moved through all of it like water, flowing downhill, finding the path of least resistance while striking every target with perfect timing. Her breathing remained controlled. Her movements stayed economical. She was pushing the testing equipment to its absolute limits while staying well within her own capabilities. The alien scientists realized they were not testing a normal biological entity. They were witnessing something that evolution had spent millions of years perfecting. A predator species that had learned to thrive in any environment and overcome any obstacle through pure speed and adaptability. And Han-Na was about to show them just how much faster she could really go. The combat simulation had become a war zone that defied every safety protocol the alien scientists had ever written. Holographic enemies filled the testing chamber, firing simulated weapons that created light patterns so intense they hurt to look at directly. Moving barriers crashed into each other as the system tried to create cover and obstacles faster than its processors could handle. The air filled with energy discharges that made the hair on alien arms stand up from electromagnetic interference. In the center of this chaos, Han-Na moved like she had been born for exactly this kind of fighting. Her reaction times had stabilized at an incredible 0.019 seconds, but more impressive was her ability to think several moves ahead while her body executed complex combat maneuvers. She was no longer just avoiding enemy fire. She was using the enemy's own attacks against them. When one holographic soldier fired at her position, she would move in a way that caused the shot to hit another enemy behind her. When multiple opponents tried to surround her, she would position herself so their crossfire would eliminate each other. The remaining alien scientists in the observation room watched in stunned silence as their most advanced combat training system was systematically destroyed by tactical thinking they had never encountered before. Dr. Vex Tal felt his scientific mind struggling to process what he was seeing. "She is not just fighting individual enemies," he said in a voice filled with awe and terror. "She is fighting the entire system as if it were a single opponent. She understands it better than we do, and we built it." That was exactly what Han-Na was doing. Her military training had taught her to see battlefields as complex puzzles where every element connected to every other element. The holographic enemies were not separate threats to her. They were parts of a larger machine that she needed to understand and dismantle. She began using the testing chamber's own design against it. The system was programmed to create challenging but fair scenarios for training purposes. It had rules and limitations built in to prevent actual injury to test subjects. Han-Na found those rules and turned them into weapons. When the simulation created a group of enemies in a defensive position, she would maneuver in ways that forced them to violate their own programming. They were designed not to shoot each other, but she could make them choose between hitting her or hitting their allies. The system would freeze for microseconds trying to resolve these conflicts, and she would use those tiny delays to eliminate multiple targets. The combat simulation tried desperately to adapt to her tactics. It began breaking its own rules, creating scenarios that should have been impossible. Enemies appeared in positions that violated physics. Weapons fired in directions that made no geometric sense. The testing chamber pushed beyond its design limits, trying to create something that could challenge her. Han-Na responded by abandoning conventional military tactics and inventing new ones in real time. She began moving in three-dimensional patterns that used the walls and ceiling as fighting surfaces. She discovered she could predict where holographic enemies would appear by reading the subtle changes in light patterns that preceded their materialization. 0.018 seconds, 0.017 seconds, 0.016 seconds. Each measurement represented performance that should have been physically impossible for any carbon-based life form. The alien scientists had to keep adjusting their instruments because the numbers were beyond anything they had calibrated for. Dr. Yil Ara watched smoke pour from her control station as circuits melted down under the stress of trying to track impossible movements. "She is not following the laws of biology," she said in a shaking voice. "She is not following the laws of physics. She moves like reality bends around her will." The truth was that Han-Na had entered a state of consciousness that humans rarely achieved, but had evolved the capacity for. Under extreme stress, the human brain could shift into emergency mode where normal limitations were temporarily suspended. Time perception changed. Pain responses shut down. Physical capabilities increased beyond normal ranges. Han-Na was operating in this state now while remaining completely in control of her actions. She was not berserk or uncontrolled. She was coldly calculating and utterly efficient. Every movement had purpose. Every decision advanced her tactical position. The combat simulation made its final desperate attempt to challenge her. It activated what the designers called the impossible scenario. This was a test that had never been passed by any being in the galaxy. Multiple enemies would attack simultaneously from every direction, requiring responses that were faster than the speed of nerve impulses. The testing chamber filled with holographic soldiers that appeared in perfect coordination. They fired weapons that created interlocking fields of deadly energy. They moved in patterns that left no safe zones and no escape routes. They attacked with timing so precise that there should have been no way to counter all of them. Han-Na saw the impossible scenario unfold around her and felt something like excitement mixed with professional appreciation. Finally, a challenge worthy of her full attention. She studied the attack pattern for 0.003 seconds, which was enough time for her enhanced consciousness to identify 17 different solutions. She chose the most elegant one. Instead of trying to counter each enemy individually, she found a single movement that would neutralize all of them at once. She dropped low and spun, while moving forward in a way that took her through the exact center of their formation at precisely the moment when their own crossfire would eliminate each other. The impossible scenario lasted 0.008 seconds. Han-Na solved it in 0.015 seconds, while making it look as easy as stepping over a puddle. Every holographic enemy vanished as the simulation registered their elimination. The testing chamber fell silent, except for the sound of overloaded machinery cooling down. Emergency lights cast eerie shadows through the smoke rising from destroyed equipment. Han-Na stood in the center of it all, breathing normally and looking around with mild curiosity at the destruction. To her, this had been an interesting challenge, but not an overwhelming one. Like a particularly intense training session that had required her attention, but not her absolute maximum effort. The observation room was completely silent. The alien. Scientists stared at readings that challenged their fundamental understanding of life physics and reality itself. They had witnessed something that would be studied in universities across the galaxy for generations to come. Dr. Vex Tal looked at his destroyed instruments and his impossible data and felt his scientific worldview crumble into dust. They had built the most advanced testing facility in known space. They had created challenges that could push any species to their absolute limits. One human female had just broken everything they built without even breathing hard. And somehow, Dr. Vex Tal suspected that she had still been holding back. The testing system was screaming, not literally screaming, but making sounds that machinery makes when it is pushed far beyond what it was designed to handle. Warning alarms filled the observation room as control panels flashed red and orange, danger signals. Smoke poured from overheated processors that were trying to calculate numbers they had never been programmed to process. Dr. Vex Tal found himself in completely unknown territory. The testing equipment had been built to challenge the fastest beings in the galaxy. It had safety margins built in that should have made it impossible to damage. Yet one human female was pushing it to complete system failure just by moving naturally. In the testing chamber, Han-Na had found what humans called the zone. Everything around her moved in slow motion while her mind operated at impossible speeds. She could see the pattern behind every light flash and predict where barriers would move before the computers finished calculating their positions. Her reaction times had stabilized at 0.029 seconds, but the real miracle was how she chained multiple reactions together. She would dodge one threat while simultaneously countering another and positioning herself for a third movement. Her body had become a fluid weapon that responded to her will without conscious thought. "We have to shut this down," shouted Dr. Yill, Ara over the noise of failing equipment. Her silver skin was now completely white with terror. "The power systems are overloading. If this continues, we could lose the entire testing facility." But Dr. Vex Tal was mesmerized by what he was witnessing. "She is not just reacting," he said in wonder. "She is predicting. She is calculating. She is fighting our system like it is a living enemy." And that was exactly what Han-Na was doing. Her military training had taught her to treat every combat scenario as a chess game played at light speed. Find the enemy patterns, exploit their weaknesses, turn their strengths against them. The testing chamber had become her opponent, and she was winning. She moved through the obstacle course with perfect efficiency. Every step took her exactly where she needed to be. Every hand movement struck precisely the right target. Every dodge avoided threats with minimal energy expenditure. She had become a machine built for one purpose, destroying anything that threatened her. The computers tried desperately to create scenarios that would challenge her. They generated pattern sequences that should have been impossible to predict. They created timing combinations that required superhuman coordination. They pushed the testing chamber into configurations that violated their own safety protocols. Han-Na responded to all of it like a dancer who had memorized every step of an incredibly complex performance. She flowed through movements that should have been impossible with grace, that made them look effortless. 0.027 seconds, 0.025 seconds, 0.023 seconds. Each new measurement broke barriers that alien science had thought were absolute. The observation room began evacuating as more equipment exploded in showers of sparks and smoke. But a few scientists remained transfixed by the impossible performance happening below them. Researcher Peck Tin had turned completely black with shock. His fur was standing straight up as he stared at readings that challenged his understanding of reality. She is operating faster than neural transmission should allow, he whispered. The signals from her brain to her muscles should take longer than her total reaction time. The truth was both simpler and more complex than the alien scientists realized. Humans had evolved as pursuit predators on a world filled with creatures that were individually stronger, faster, and more dangerous than they were. Survival had required the development of nervous systems optimized for split-second decision-making under extreme stress. Han-Na nervous system was the product of millions of years of evolutionary pressure. Every pathway had been refined for maximum speed. Every connection had been optimized for instant response. Her brain could process threats and calculate responses faster than most species could even recognize danger. But evolution was only part of the story. Her military training had taken those natural abilities and refined them into something approaching perfection. Thousands of hours of combat drills had taught her body to respond without conscious thought. Countless exercises had trained her mind to find order in chaos. The testing system began smoking as its processors melted down, trying to keep up with her performance. Emergency cooling systems activated, filling the chamber with jets of supercooled gas. But Han-Na barely noticed the change in temperature. Her focus was complete and unbreakable. Dr. Vex Tal made a decision that would haunt him for the rest of his life. Instead of shutting down the overloading system, he reached for the emergency controls that would activate combat simulation mode. This was technology reserved for training the galaxy's most elite military units. Surely this would finally challenge the human. The testing chamber transformed in seconds. The simple light targets were replaced by holographic enemies that moved and shot back. The barriers became cover that could be used tactically. The red lights became simulated weapon fire that would register hits if contact was made. This was not a coordination test anymore. This was virtual warfare at its most intense level. Han-Na saw the change, and her expression shifted into something that made the remaining alien scientists take involuntary steps backward. Her face became a mask of cold calculation and deadly intent. Her eyes turned predatory in a way that activated fear responses in species that had never even seen a human before. The first holographic enemy appeared and fired simulated laser beams at her position. Han-Na moved like liquid lightning flowing out of the way while simultaneously calculating firing angles and cover positions. She had gone from test subject to hunter in the space of a heartbeat. The combat simulation unleashed everything it had. Multiple enemies attacked from different directions. Covering fire created kill zones that should have been impossible to cross. Movement patterns were designed to trap and eliminate even the most skilled warriors. Han-Na responded by doing something that no alien species had ever attempted. She stopped thinking of the simulation as separate enemies and started treating it as a single complex organism that she needed to dissect and destroy. She found the weak points in the firing patterns and exploited them ruthlessly. She used the enemy's own positions against them, turning their advantages into tactical disasters. She moved through the battlefield like a force of nature that could not be stopped or contained. The simulation tried to adapt to her tactics, but she adapted faster. Every time it created new threats, she found new solutions. Every time it closed one tactical option, she opened 3 others. She was not just fighting the system anymore. She was teaching it why humans had become the most feared warriors in the galaxy. And the lesson was just beginning. Dr. Vex Tal stared at his screen and blinked all 4 eyes slowly. The number glowing on his display could not be correct. 0.089 seconds. That was faster than their current galactic record holder, and the human had barely seemed to try. "Check the calibration, Coleman," he said to his assistant. His voice sounded strange and tight. Coleman ran his green fingers over his control panel, making clicking sounds as he pressed different buttons. "The calibration is perfect, sir. All systems are working normally." The second light appeared on the opposite wall, and Han-Na turned toward it with smooth, easy movement. She walked across the platform and touched the light like she was pointing at something interesting. The light went out, and the computers recorded another impossible number, 0.083 seconds. Around the observation room, other alien scientists began gathering behind Dr. Vex Tal to look at his screen. Dr. Yil Ara stretched her long silver neck to see better, while Morkek used two of his tentacles to point at the display. "This makes no sense," Dr. Yil Ara said in her musical voice. "She is moving like someone taking a casual walk, but the numbers show superhuman speed. Maybe the human is trying to deceive us," suggested Pectin. His fur had turned bright orange, which meant he was confused and excited. Maybe she is hiding her true abilities. Dr. Vex Tal watched Hanna carefully through the observation window. She was humming a little song while she waited for the next target to appear. She looked relaxed and happy, like someone playing a simple game with children. There was no sign she was putting in any special effort. The test moved to Phase 2 automatically. Now, lights began appearing in different locations around the room, requiring Hanna to move her whole body to reach them. The computer would track how quickly she could move from target to target while maintaining accuracy. Hanna saw the new lights and smiled. This was more interesting than just touching stationary targets. She began moving around the platform with fluid grace, reaching out to touch each light as it appeared. Her movements looked like dancing rather than testing. She stepped and reached and turned with natural rhythm that made it seem effortless. 0.078 seconds, 0.074 seconds, 0.071 seconds. Each new measurement was lower than the last. The human was not slowing down as she warmed up. She was getting faster. "Impossible," whispered researcher Morkek. His tentacles were trembling as he watched his own instruments confirm the incredible readings. No carbon-based life form can sustain this level of performance. The neural pathways alone should create delays that make these times physically impossible. Dr. Vex Tal felt his scientific worldview beginning to crack like ice under pressure. Everything they knew about biology and reaction speeds was being challenged by this one human female who acted like she was having fun at a simple party game. "Increase the difficulty," he ordered. His voice was shaking slightly. The computers responded by making the lights appear and disappear much faster. Now each target was only visible for half a second before it vanished. Most species would struggle to even see the lights at this speed, let alone reach them in time. Hanna noticed the change immediately. The lights were flashing much quicker now and disappearing before she could reach them with her casual walking pace. She stopped humming and looked around the room with more focus. "Oh, now it's getting interesting," she said out loud. "This feels more like the reaction drills from basic training." She changed her stance slightly. Her feet spread a little wider and her knees bent a bit more. Her hands came up to chest level and her eyes became more alert. She was still nowhere near her maximum effort, but she was finally paying attention to the test. The next light appeared on the far wall, and Hanna moved toward it with sudden speed. She did not run or rush, but her movement was completely different from before. Every step was precise, and every motion was economical. She reached the target just as it was about to disappear and touched it with perfect timing. 0.068 seconds. The observation room fell silent except for the humming of machines and the soft breathing of alien scientists who were struggling to believe what they were seeing. Hanna had just broken the galactic record for reaction speed, and she was still treating it like a warm-up exercise. More lights began appearing in rapid sequence around the room. Hanna moved between them with increasing fluidity and speed. She began to anticipate where the next target would appear based on the patterns she was noticing. Her military training had taught her to find patterns in chaos and use them to her advantage. The alien scientists watched in stunned amazement as the human began to solve their testing system like a puzzle. She was not just reacting to targets anymore. She was predicting them and positioning herself accordingly. 0.064 seconds, 0.061 seconds, 0.057 seconds. "We need to stop this," said Dr. Yil Ara. Her silver skin had turned pale white, which meant she was frightened. These readings are beyond anything we have ever measured. This human is operating outside the laws of biology as we understand them. But Dr. Vex Tal was fascinated by what he was seeing. His scientific curiosity overcame his fear as he watched Han Na move through the testing sequence with growing efficiency and grace. She was learning and adapting in real time, becoming better with every target she touched. "No," he said, firmly. "We continue. I want to see how far this goes." Han-Na had found her rhythm now. The lights appeared and she moved to meet them with perfect timing. Her breathing remained steady and controlled. Her movements became more precise with each passing second. She was still holding back her true capabilities, but the test was finally challenging enough to require her attention. In the observation room, alarms began sounding as the testing equipment approached its normal operational limits. The computers had never been required to track anything moving this fast for this long. Warning lights flashed on control panels as systems that were designed to test the galaxy's elite began struggling to keep up with one human female. Dr. Vex Tal looked at the warning lights and made a decision that would change everything. Instead of stopping the test, he reached for the controls that would push the system into its emergency high-speed mode. Phase 3 was about to begin, and none of them were prepared for what would happen next. The big metal station floated in dark space like a silver coin against black cloth. Inside the station, alien scientists moved around with excitement. Today was special. Today, they would test a human. Dr. Vex Tal stood at the big window looking down into the white testing room. His 4 yellow eyes blinked slowly as he watched the door open. The human stepped inside, and Dr. Vex Tal felt his hearts beat faster. This was Captain Han-Na Kim from Earth. She wore a dark blue military uniform with shiny buttons, and her black hair was pulled back tight. Her brown eyes looked around the room with calm interest. Han-Na had volunteered for these tests 3 weeks ago. The Alien Council had asked for human volunteers to help with their research. They told her it was just simple coordination testing. Nothing dangerous, nothing hard. Just touch some lights and move around a little. Han-Na thought it sounded easy enough, and she needed something to do while her ship was getting repairs. The testing room was very white and very clean. The walls were smooth and shiny like mirrors. Small lights blinked in different colors along the ceiling. In the center of the room, there was a raised platform with targets painted on it. Everything looked harmless enough to Han-Na. She had done military training exercises that were much more complex than this. Above her, in the observation room, Dr. Vex Tal turned to his assistant, Cole Min. Cole Min was younger and had green skin instead of blue. His 2 eyes were bigger than his boss, and he always seemed nervous about everything. "The human seems very calm," Cole Min said as he looked at his instruments. "Her heart rate is slow. Her breathing is steady. She does not seem afraid at all." Dr. Vex Tal nodded his large head. This was good for getting baseline readings before the real tests started. For many months, the Galactic Council had been hearing strange stories about humans. Other alien species who had fought alongside humans in the border wars told impossible tales. They said humans could move faster than laser beams when they were in danger. They said human soldiers could dodge attacks that should have been impossible to avoid. They said humans had reflexes that defied the laws of biology. The scientific community had laughed at these stories. Every species in the galaxy had been tested for reaction speed. The fastest species were the Veltari from the Crystal Worlds. They could react to threats in 0.12 seconds. Most species took between 0.15 and 0.25 seconds to respond to danger. The scientists expected humans to be somewhere in the middle, maybe slightly better than average, because humans had evolved from hunting animals, but nothing special. Around the observation room, other alien scientists gathered at their machines. There was Dr. Yil Ara, the chief physicist with her long neck. and silver skin. There was researcher Moore Keck, who had tentacles instead of arms and could work 6 different machines at once. There was young scientist Peck Tin, who was so excited about testing a human that his fur kept changing colors. They had tested 43 different species over the past 5 years. The results were always predictable. Some species were a little faster than others, but the differences were small. The fastest reaction time ever recorded was .098 seconds by a Veltari warrior who had trained his whole life for combat. Han-Na stretched her arms over her head and rolled her shoulders. The military had taught her to stay loose before any kind of test or exercise. She looked up at the observation window and gave a small wave. She could see shapes moving behind the dark glass but could not make out any details. The lights in the room dimmed slightly, and a soft musical tone played from hidden speakers. Han-Na recognized this as the signal that the test was starting. She had been briefed about the basic procedures. Lights would appear on the walls, and she was supposed to touch them as quickly as possible. Simple enough. Dr. Vex Tal looked at his instruments one more time. Everything was calibrated perfectly. The sensors could measure reaction times down to thousandths of a second. The cameras could record movements faster than any eye could follow. The computers were ready to process data at incredible speeds. None of them knew they were about to witness something that would change their understanding of life itself. Han-Na stood on the platform and looked around the room with alert eyes. Her military training had taught her to always be aware of her surroundings. She noticed the small cameras in the corners. She saw the sensors built into the walls. She felt the slight vibration in the floor that meant heavy machinery was running somewhere below. This was much more advanced than the simple coordination test they had described to her. But Han-Na was not worried. She had trained with advanced military equipment before. She had faced real combat situations that were much more stressful than any laboratory test could be. The alien scientists held their breath as the first test sequence began loading into the computers. They had no idea that they were about to meet something completely outside their experience. They thought they were testing just another species with normal biology and normal limitations. They were about to learn that humans were anything but normal. Han-Na took a deep breath and settled into a ready stance. Her feet were shoulder-width apart, and her knees were slightly bent. Her hands hung loose at her sides, but ready to move quickly. Her eyes scanned the walls, looking for the first target to appear. In the observation room, warning lights began blinking on the control panels. The computers were finishing their startup sequences. The test was about to begin. Dr. Vex Tal put his finger over the start button and looked down at the human one more time. She looked so ordinary. 2 arms, 2 legs, 1 head, just like dozens of other species they had tested. There was nothing special or unusual about her appearance. She was just another carbon-based life form with standard biology. He pressed the button. The first light appeared on the wall, and Han-Na moved toward it casually like she was reaching for a cup of tea. Her hand touched the light, and it went out. The computers recorded her reaction time, .089 seconds. Dr. Vex Tal stared at his screen in confusion. That could not be right.